Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Let's Talk Headlines series. I'm your host Jay, and this is The Objective. I want to thank you for tuning in to Season 2, Episode 18 of the Let's Talk Headlines series. Before we get into our show, I want to remind you to visit www.politicalstorm.com. There you can find some great content from some talented content creators. I am grateful that I'm actually a part of the Political Storm team. You can find some of my content, actually all of my content will be on Political Storm. Also, if you have Facebook, be sure to check out Political Storm on Facebook. Give us a like. And also on Instagram at Political Storm. So there's a bunch of different platforms that you could actually check out Political Storm, our content, and I'm sure there will be someone or something that you like. If you guys haven't already, follow me on Instagram at The Objective Podcast. I love dialoguing. I love learning new things from new people and, just sharing and hearing everyone's point of view. So be sure to give me a follow on Instagram at The Objective Podcast. I'm happy to hear from you, and I'm happy to make new friends regardless of where you stand or sit or walk on the political spectrum. Today's episode, we are actually going to be talking about two things, one of them more in depth. And I have a bit of a disclaimer before we start this show. We will be touching on a sensitive issue. And I do realize that this is a sensitive and a personal issue, and I'm not here to offend anyone. And I want to touch on this issue, the issue being abortion, because it is a hot topic in the news cycle now, especially with Biden's desire to repeal the Hyde Amendment after he has actually stood behind it for a long time. So we're going to talk about the Hyde Amendment. We're going to talk about, just the spirit and the philosophy behind, why there are people against and why there are people for that practice. So before we even continue with the show, what you'll notice at the beginning of the show is that there is a timestamp. So if you do not want to even hear what I have to say about that topic, feel free to either fast forward to the second segment of the show, or you can just close down the video. I will not be offended. If you do want to stick around to hear my point of view and just hear me kind of articulating the general points of view for and against, please stick around and let me know what you think in the comment section. So, oh yes, one more thing, even before we start the show, guys. If you haven't already, my last episode 17, was a special report on the Mueller investigation. If you guys have not seen that, it's about 30 minutes long. I know it's long. But if you do have time, like what I like to do is if I'm cleaning my room, cleaning the kitchen, I like to have a podcast on. So, if you're interested in doing that and you have the capability to do that, go ahead and listen to that episode. I think you'll enjoy it. And, there's a lot of information in there that is useful if you are paying attention, or if you're interested to see, the steps taken in the Mueller investigation, the steps taken after the Mueller investigation, and what that kind of means for all of us. Let's get this show started today. The first topic we're going to talk about, the Hyde Amendment. Now, a little history about the Hyde Amendment is that this was introduced and passed in 1977 by Congressman Henry J. Hyde. So the Hyde Amendment in U.S. politics, this is according to Wikipedia, the Hyde Amendment is a legislative provision barring the use of federal funds to pay for abortion except to save the life of the woman or if the pregnancy arises from incest or rape. This was passed 3 years, I believe it was, after Roe v. Wade. Now, the purpose of the Hyde Amendment, and the reason, like I stated before, that we're even talking about this is because presidential candidate Joe Biden was actually asked what he thought about the Hyde Amendment. And at first he said that he was in support of it, as he had been for years previous. But after that interview and after he was asked that question, he came out saying that he misspoke or he misunderstood the question, and that he is in fact for the repeal of the Hyde Amendment. So I was looking at an interview with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and she states, whether she's the authority or not is not the question, but she states that repeal or supporting repeal for the Hyde Amendment is the baseline for Democrat candidates. She's saying that you have to be on board with the repeal of the Hyde Amendment in order to be seriously considered to meet the baseline for what is required to be a Democrat candidate. So here we see that this bill, this amendment, which, to be honest with you, as per a 2016 poll, 57% of Americans supported the premise of the Hyde Amendment and 36% oppose it. So let's go again. Let's go over what the Hyde Amendment is. Let's read that again for you just to make sure that we're all on the same page. So the Hyde Amendment is a legislative provision barring the use of federal funds to pay for abortion, except to save the life of the woman. So just say that if this woman gives birth, she will die imminently. The Hyde Amendment allows for federal funding to pay for that abortion to save the woman's life. Or if a pregnancy arises from incest or rape. Unfortunately, this is an occurrence that happens with rape and females getting pregnant, as a result of a rape and incest. So these are, as I said before, 57% of Americans support the premise, 36 oppose it. So the vast majority of Americans support this. It's reasonable, right? It's kind of a common ground that people on the side of pro-life and pro-choice can get behind. So proponents of the Hyde Amendment state that one thing that the Hyde Amendment does is protects the conscience of taxpayers who actually oppose the practice of abortion. Because believe it or not, there are people against the practice who believe that it is unethical for religious reasons, personal beliefs, or whatever the case may be. The fact of the matter is that we have to come to the understanding of is that there are people on both sides of this argument, people who have valid points and valid arguments. Those in opposition to the Hyde Amendment historically state that, it affects low-income women because I believe, let me see if I have it here to pull it up. Yes. So I'm just scrolling here. It's an estimated 42% of abortion recipients live in below the poverty line. So they're saying essentially that this indiscriminately targets women who live below the poverty line, poor women who will not be able to afford an abortion unless it is federally funded. And another opposing argument to the Hyde Amendment is, just because some people don't want their tax money to go towards that practice doesn't mean anything, because I'm against war and my tax money goes to war and fighting wars. Right. So that's another argument. And I push back on that because there is a difference between, your money going towards the defense, the national security of your country, and then demanding that, taxpayer money goes towards a practice that only benefits one person. When I say one person, it's obviously not one person having abortions, but one person in terms of it only benefits a mother, say, who is doing that out of convenience. That's why the Hyde Amendment, seems like such a reasonable thing where, women who are pregnant out of, rape or incest, or if giving birth will cause her to die, it's kind of like a necessary evil that the government fund that, if that makes any sense. So before the Hyde Amendment took effect, it's estimated that 300,000 abortions were performed using taxpayer funds, and that was annually. So the issue of taxpayers taking the bill or footing the bill for the practice they are inherently against on the basis of religion, personal choice, whatever, that is one of the bigger issues, right? To what extent can you demand that somebody compromise their faith to promote legislation? Where does the Constitution draw the line? But then you have to ask yourself the question, when individuals say, and I agree that church and state need to be separate, that doesn't mean that everything legislate, it has to be anti-Christian. It means that it has to be fair. You have to take people's views into account and pass legislation that does not overstep. And I'm going to tell you here what I believe the solution is on how to legislate this practice, this controversial practice. The solution, the Holy Grail, the answer to this very divisive topic. How do you legislate something such as abortion, where there are people who inherently disagree with it, who inherently believe that it's wrong, who inherently believe that it is murder? How do you legislate that in such a way that is fair to those who hold the beliefs and those who do not? So the solution, in my humble opinion, is to privatize the abortion industry. I'm going to read this excerpt here from townhall.com. It says, the abortion industry, specifically Planned Parenthood, rakes in nearly $1 billion from private donations. According to Planned Parenthood's 2012 to 2013 annual report, the family planning organization performed 327,166 abortions and received $540.6 million in taxpayer funding, or roughly $1.5 million per day. In 2012, it had $58.2 million in excess revenue. Sorry if you hear that dog, my sister's dog's in town, and raked in over $1.3 billion in net assets. Moreover, as Susan B. Anthony lists Planned Parenthood fact sheet notes, abortion made up 93.8% of Planned Parenthood's pregnancy services, while parental care and adoption referrals accounted for only 5.6%. So, the argument that says, Planned Parenthood, deals with a myriad of services regarding women's health. Well, I mean, the stats as of 2012, 2013 state that 93.8% of Planned Parenthood services had to do with abortion, while only 5.6 had to do with parental care and adoption referrals. So the bottom line, Planned Parenthood, the mega industry, makes a ton of money from private donations. But still, the crazy thing is that it would not be able to survive in the free market. So the question is, should taxpayers foot the bill for an industry that would not survive the free market? The fact of the matter is that in order for Planned Parenthood to survive, they need every single person to chip in, even those who don't agree with the ethics surrounding these practices. And this is a very, very interesting line that I read from slate.com. A lot of people seem to think that the right to choose abortion is compatible with the right not to pay for other people's abortion. So this Hyde Amendment, it seems to be it will be a big issue, and we will hear more about the Hyde Amendment. But it's just important to know exactly what it is, what the Hyde Amendment is, who it protects, and pretty much what it consists of. And I think, and most Americans think, that it is a reasonable amendment. It is a reasonable legislation. So in conclusion, aside from the whole Hyde Amendment, whether it should be repealed or if it should remain as law in relation to federally funding abortions, aside from all that, I believe the ultimate solution to ensure that everybody's rights are taken care of in an equal manner is that you privatize that industry. That way you are not infringing on the beliefs, on the constitutional rights of taxpayers who are against the practice. That way everybody's happy. Because there are it's a $1 billion industry. There are billions of dollars and billions of donations that come in to support this practice. So let those who are in support of it foot the bill instead of those who are inherently, categorically against it. Hang with me as we get to a break. We're almost on the show, guys. I will be back in a minute.
Charges have been filed in a violent crash that killed a 42-year-old mother in North Hills.
Now, the suspect in the case, an undocumented immigrant with a lengthy criminal past.
A heartbroken father over the sudden loss of his daughter. 42-year-old mother of two, Sandra Duran, was killed as she drove to her family's home in Arleta.
It hurts when somebody out of nowhere just takes your daughter's life and then you see the record he had.
Oh my God, no! No, you didn't do that!
Suffolk County Police found Nisa Mickens on this tree-lined street last September, murdered on the eve of her 16th birthday.
My daughter is the best thing that ever happened to me.
Most of the suspects arrested in these recent cases were in the country illegally.
Police Corporal Ronil Singh was shot and killed during a traffic stop just hours after Christmas.
Investigators say the suspect was in this country illegally.
I did not know Christmas morning at 4 o'clock in the morning when I said goodbye to him and sent him off to his family that it would be the last time that I saw him.
Ronil Singh was my older brother. Yes, he's not coming back, but there's a lot of people out there that misses him.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the second segment of episode 18 of the Let's Talk Headline series. I am still your host, Jay. And as we get into this second segment, we're going to be talking about the 5% tariffs that President Trump threatened to impose on Mexico. And, you know, it appears that this threat actually worked and it whipped Mexico into action on the southern border. So before we even get into this show, I want us to start off with this thought here. By sharing accountability with a spirit of mutual responsibility, progress is achieved. Think of the UN for a second, the United Nations, which is a group of nations who come together with a shared responsibility to promote peace on a global scale. These countries make contributions, and the more equal the contributions, obviously you don't expect a small country to be giving exactly the same amount as the United States of America or other great mega super countries, mega super. But you do it in such a way where it is equal, it is fair. Not equal per se, but it is fair. So sometimes, this accountability needs to be levied. And we see that with Trump's threats of imposed tariff on Mexican goods if they don't step it up and start enforcing immigration laws. And so with this threat of 5% on Mexican goods that Trump has imposed, or should I say threatened to impose, Mexico found this newfound energy. They have obtained a second wind, as I like to call it, and they sent 6,000 National Guard military personnel to the border. They are now taking in migrants seeking asylum as their cases go through the legal system instead of having them released into American society with a mere promise to return in a couple of years for their case to be heard. Because let's be honest with you, folks. I mean, on paper, that may sound nice and all, and butterflies and rainbows, but let's be honest. Just say you're telling me you come to America, they let you in temporarily while your case is going through the system, and they expect you to come back in 3 years to hear whether you're able to stay or not. Let's be honest, folks. Not a lot of people are coming back, if any. So now Mexico is holding them as their cases go through. Mexico promising to change their immigration laws in such a way that puts the onus of action on them rather than the United States of America in curbing illegal crossings into the states. So Mexico is taking some meaningful, or they're saying they're taking some meaningful steps towards, doing their part in this southern border issue that's going on. Now, another thing, all the while this is happening, and mind you, President Trump had received a lot of flack for this. A lot of naysayers saying that this was useless. These threats of tariffs is just a horrible idea. And lo and behold, it whipped Mexico and their leadership into action. So Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, he signed into law the sanctuary city ban. So this would require local law enforcement in Florida to cooperate with federal authorities when it comes to deporting illegal immigrants involved in criminal activity. So just for some context here, I don't know if many of you remember Officer Repealing Singh, a California police officer who conducted a traffic stop December 26th, the day after Christmas, had a beautiful family, and he was gunned down by an illegal immigrant who was not a first-time offender, he was a repeat offender, meaning that if this sanctuary law ban had been written into law, then local law enforcement would be able to notify ICE and federal authorities of this gunman due to his previous criminal record, and he would have been deported long before. So the laws, what they did, they kind of handicapped local law enforcement from even stating to federal authorities that they were dealing with people that needed to be deported. So with this sanctuary city law ban, it gives law enforcement the authority and the power to actually work together with federal law enforcement in order to enforce the law, including immigration law. That was a mouthful. And it always brings me back to this: illegality does not breed safety. Okay, illegality, even if in the spirit of charity, does not breed safety. Let me say it again. Illegality, even if it's in the spirit of charity and magnanimity, does not breed safety. It may give temporary relief to some people, but in the long run, it does not breed safety. I'm waiting. Someone give me an argument against that illegality does breed safety. It simply doesn't. It's 1 plus 1, right? So I wrote this down here. I said, we can be as charitable as we want on an individual basis. However, in the realm of governing and legislation, charity and magnanimity is trumped by the need for safety. Okay? So again, we can be as charitable as we want on an individual basis. However, that means that we can take people in, we can go out and buy clothing for those who are living on the streets. We can try to hook these people up with jobs and housing options and whatnot. We can do all of that within ourselves. But when it comes to governing and legislation and making laws, charity, giving, that is all trumped by the safety of a country's constituents. Think about that. No one's saying charity is wrong. No one's saying generosity is wrong. No one's saying kindness is wrong. But in the realm of governance, in the realm of law and order, safety, preserving life, preserving property, keeping the peace, that trumps those individual virtues. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to episode 18. I hope that you learned even one thing. I hope that even one thought was challenged. I hope that even one thought was confirmed and your convictions were potentially confirmed. But it is continuing to be my hope that you make it your goal to be objective. Have a good night.